To start off today's video, what I'd like to do is revisit a few segments of a past video I did over a year ago titled Joe Biden, Immigration and the End of Black America. Now, when I made that video, I started it off with a clip of what I call the great prophecy of Dr. Claude Anderson. In this clip, he discusses the impact that immigration will have on Black Americans politically and how damning it will be to them if it is not brought under control. Now, fast forward about 20 or so years later, and everything Dr. Claude Anderson said is now coming to fruition.
The second thing is that you're going to have an unending influx of immigrants into the country. And that's what Dr. Price is talking about. And nobody, no black politician, no black organization wants to deal with that issue. They will avoid it at all costs, even though in their hearts they know that's one of the biggest problems for black folk. We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4. And the worst part about it is as you descend and go down to number 4, those other groups are going to go up. And as they go past you, you're going to have major racial clashes in this country. You're going to have fights all over this country between blacks and Hispanics, blacks and Asians, blacks and poor whites. And black folk cannot fight all these groups. Everybody can not always be against black folk. They know that we are vulnerable and we are defenseless. And we cannot fight those groups.
Now, when Dr. Anderson stated that Black Americans would have major clashes with these groups all over the country, he was not talking about physical violence. What he was talking about was political and economic violence, which is the most sophisticated form of violence there is. No one needs to put hands on you when they can simply strangle you economically. Now, let's get back into my old video titled Joe Biden, Immigration and the End of Black America to get a better look at what economic violence looks like. And just as a heads up, when we get to this New York Times article, the redacted portions of this article was the word C19 and all of the other words that are in relation to that word. I know it seems a little silly, but back in early 2021, YouTube was knocking channels down for simply having the word spelled out on screen. So I just wanted to give you a little heads up on what that is so there's no confusion. Now, let me elaborate on what Dr. Claude Anderson was talking about, because when he's talking about fights and clashes, he's not talking about physical violence. He's talking about politics. For example, I did a video back in November of 2019 titled Chinese Immigrants Attempt to Block Affirmative Action in Washington State. And that video was based on this article that's here in front of you from the Seattle Times titled Washington Voters Narrowly Rejecting Affirmative Action in Referendum 88. Another example would be this New York Times article titled A Blank Relief Fund Was Only for Black Residents. Then Came the Lawsuits. Oregon earmarked $62 million to explicitly benefit Black individuals and business owners. Now some of the money is in limbo after lawsuits alleging racial discrimination. Now, when you go on to read this article, what you'll find out is that the lawsuit was brought on by 2 white business owners and a Hispanic business owner. Now, let's take a moment to read a portion of this article. Supporters of the fund argued that the $62 million accounted for about 4.5% of what the state received, leaving plenty for residents who are not Black. They also noted that other blank-related funds were tailored in a way that allowed them to almost exclusively benefit particular racial and ethnic groups. A $10 million fund created by the state that largely benefits undocumented Latino immigrants, and one created by Portland officials to aid a district of largely Asian-owned businesses. So now the question is simply to be asked, what's the problem here? If everyone is getting their money, why is it that as soon as it's time for you to get your slice of the pie, Now, all of a sudden, everybody has a problem and they want to bring on lawsuits and they want to form coalitions to block policy that could possibly help you. How come everybody has a problem when it's your turn to get a slice of the pie? That's the question. And that's what you'll be dealing with moving forward, and that's going to increase. That, ladies and gentlemen, is violence. Other groups get all types of funding and assistance that is exclusively for them all the time. But the moment there appears to be some sort of assistance for Black Americans, all of a sudden, everybody not only has a problem with it, but is actively working to stop it. This is going on right now with Black farmers in America who have yet to receive a dime from Joe Biden's American Rescue Plan concerning debt relief. Now, mind you, the debt relief program was not exclusively for Black farmers, but that's how it was sold to the public. All of the articles on the debt relief program described it as if it was some sort of reparations payment. Thus, the reaction towards the program was received as such.
But let me give you an example of something that really bothers me. In this bill, if you're a farmer, your loan will be forgiven up to 120% of your loan, not 100%, but 120% of your loan if you're socially disadvantaged, if you're African American, some other minority. But if you're white person, if you're a white woman, no forgiveness as reparations.
And the moment the American Rescue Plan became law, this happened. Legislation signed into law by President Joe Biden in the spring of 2021 was supposed to bring debt relief to socially disadvantaged farmers. A little over a year later, lawsuits blocking the program threatened to accelerate a long-running decline in the number of Black-owned farms. The debt relief program, which is held up in the courts, had met immediate resistance from groups of white farmers as well as banks. White farmers argued that the relief amounted to a reversal of racial discrimination and sued the USDA to block the program. Separately, the early repayment of loans under the program upset banks, which said they were being unjustly deprived of interest payments. Courts have issued preliminary injunctions blocking the relief. That left qualifying farmers who completed paperwork paving the way for debt forgiveness deeper into debt and struggling as they deal with soaring costs of fuel, fertilizer, and other inputs, Boyd said. There are folks so concerned that the program won't be implemented that they've already started liquidating assets, said Dania Davey, the director of land retention and advocacy for the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund, a nonprofit cooperative association of Black farmers, landowners, and cooperatives with members largely across the South. Now, I want to read the opening sentence to this highlighted section one more time. There are folks so concerned that the program won't be implemented, they've already started liquidating assets. So because the debt relief program has been blocked, Black farmers have two options. You can lose your land outright due to crushing debt and inflation, or you can sell your land off. And I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that they're selling off their farms for well under the actual value of the land out of desperation. Please understand, this is violence. And now that same violence continues with Ice Cube. Now, as many of you already know, Ice Cube recently struck a $100 million deal with the NFL for Black businesses. And not too long after, this article was released titled "Ice Cube's Alleged Anti-Asian, Anti-Semitic Past Resurfaces After News of NFL Partnership." And it should be noted that this article was produced by the website Next Shark, which is an Asian American news outlet. Now, the writer of this article is trying to be slick here, but he's not. You see, 2 years ago, Ice Cube sent a strong message out to all of those attempting to label him as anti-Semitic. And that message was sent through Cube's lawyers, who issued a cease and desist letter to Marlo Stern after writing a hit piece on Ice Cube for the Daily Beast titled "Ice Cube's Long Disturbing History of Anti-Semitism," where he lied on Ice Cube in an attempt to assassinate his character. Now, in the cease and desist letter, Ice Cube's lawyer threatened further legal action if the lies continued. Understand, this was not only a message to Stern, but a message to all of those attempting to push the lie that Ice Cube is anti-Semitic. Now coming back to this article by the Asian American news outlet Next Shark, what they did in order to be slick is not outright call Ice Cube anti-Asian or Semitic, but instead fished out random tweets of those who are in opposition to the NFL partnership with Ice Cube, as well as pulling up old lyrics from the 1980s. You see, as a news outlet, if they say Ice Cube is anti-Asian or Semitic, then they have to prove it. But if they're just citing the tweets of other people's opinions on the matter, then it's fair game, because it's not Next Shark saying this about Ice Cube. They're just reporting on random people saying this on Twitter. And with this article, the hope is that they can instigate enough anger against Ice Cube so that the NFL drops the partnership and completely shuts it down. Now, the tweet that was quoted that I felt was the most interesting was the one that stated, "How often do you hear about these programs for Hispanic or Asian communities and businesses compared to black ones? Who complains about racism the most? I'm not knocking for supporting black communities and businesses. Help all or none, not one." Now, the reason I found this tweet the most interesting is because when people say help all or none, that's a lie. As you saw in the New York Times article earlier, the residents of Oregon had no issue with Hispanic and Asian businesses receiving economic assistance. But the moment economic assistance was issued for Black American businesses, all of a sudden it's a problem, and it should be for everybody, not just one group. Now, nobody ever says this when it comes to other groups who receive all types of legislative set-asides and financial assistance. Nobody cares. But the moment you start talking about Black Americans receiving anything exclusively for them, now all of a sudden, so-called people of color and minorities are playing defense in an attempt to stop you from attaining resources. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that is violence, and it should be treated as such. And with all that being said, that does it for today's video. So please make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. All social media links will be pinned in the comment section below. And with all that being said, that does it for today's video. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. Please make sure you text tdhiphop to number 33222. That's tdhiphop to number 33222. That way you'll get a direct text notification whenever I release a new video, but it also serves as a protection plan for myself in case YouTube ever gives this channel the axe. I'll be able to send you a direct link to where you can find me next. And last but not least, for those of you who have a love and appreciation for the work that I put in on this channel, the number one way you can show your support is through Patreon. For only $3 a month, that will help put me in position to take TD Hip Hop Media off of YouTube. Remember, the goal is not to grow big on YouTube, but to grow independent of YouTube. And for those who have issues with joining Patreon, you could also hit the join button that's next to the subscribe button, and that way you can become an official channel member for as little as $3 a month as well. And lastly, if you have not already, please make sure you join the emailing list. There is no way that I can go independent of YouTube if I cannot take the audience with me. And the link to that will be pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you for your time, and until the next video, peace.